Traverser is an adventure game following the story of a young girl by the name of Valerie Bennett. When looking at Traverser, the first thing most people will comment on is its striking visual style. The artists of the game put a ton of effort into creating a believable and bleak world on the brink. In the world of Traverser, the sun is gone out, freezing the entire planet and leaving humanity to make a choice: survive underground or face extinction. Valerie lives in the last bastion of humanity known as Brimstone, along with her father, Linus Bennett, the chief inventor for Ravencorp.
Good morning, Val. Sleep well?
While Traverser's concept of a post-apocalyptic future is not a new one, its setting is what really sells the whole thing. The game does a wonderful job of conveying the hopelessness of humanity's struggle to survive. This is compounded by the game's early introduction of Ravencorp, the de facto corporation that owns basically everything. Ravencorp is the closest thing to a government you'll find in Brimstone, keeping everything running and offering work to those who are looking for it. Which naturally means they're evil. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The game basically flat out tells you Ravencorp is evil within the first 10 minutes, 5 minutes if you're observant. Around the 3-minute mark you'll meet Edgar Foss, the chairman of Ravencorp, and your obvious villain for the evening. If his Dick Dastardly-like visage doesn't give it away, I assure you that the dialogue will.
Stinking late. Can't have that.
I suppose when you're running the world, you don't have to worry about whether people think you're evil or not. Despite that, they still go out of their way to make the most diabolical-looking guard uniforms you've ever seen. Imagine if your entire police force wore masks with glowing green eyes and scratchy throat voice modulators.
If you don't want no trouble, leave.
Somehow I doubt you'd be approaching Officer Catthroat with a problem you might have. You might be wondering how Valerie feels about all of this. Well, I have some bad news for you. Unless you like stopping all the action of the game to read her journal, you'll never find out. Valerie's voice is only heard twice in the entire game. Once in the intro cutscene, and again in the outro cutscene.
Before the corporation, the sun provided us with light, warmth, and air. We were promised these forever, but we were deceived.
This completely kills any attachment you might have with the character, as anytime you want her opinions or reactions on something, you have to stop playing the game, whip out her journal, and read them. This really bothers me, as I can't feel an attachment to my main character, which gives me no reason to fight for her. Just as icing on the cake, Valerie's voice acting is really solid in the few times we get to hear it. Why on earth would they not include this in the game itself? You may be thinking a silent protagonist isn't necessarily a bad thing, and you'd be correct, but usually this is because the developers are trying to get you to feel as though you are in the action. However, in Traverser, Valerie does have feelings and actions, but we're forced to stop playing if we want to access them. This means we have no way of identifying as the character, but only with the character, and this is ruined by having to read everything. This is where the setting of Traverser quickly begins to fall apart. This game is heavily based around its narrative, and yet the narrative we're given is completely derailed by the style of the game. You see, young Valerie is trying out to be a Traverser, a peacekeeping initiative created by Ravencorp. Traversers are given gravity gloves, a tool granting them the ability to flip between both the upper and lower city of Brimstone. In an effort to ensure you fully understand just how evil Ravencorp is, the game nails you in the head with a classist structure that can't be any more forced. For whatever reason, through the use of gravity manipulation, there is literally a second city under your feet at all times. Everyone in the lower city is living in squalor. There's a homeless problem. A thick fog makes it impossible to breathe without a mask. The list goes on and on. The problem is, the world doesn't fit this narrative. The biggest established problem the lower city faces is their lack of oxygen to live off of. Despite that, the game itself completely ruins this narrative. There's a quest you need to complete for a beggar, where he asks you to find him a tank of oxygen, implying that this is a very challenging task and there's little oxygen to be found. I was able to get him his tank by simply walking over to the right side of the screen and finding it on the streets, completely unhidden. The streets are literally littered with oxygen tanks. To say Traverser suffers from an identity crisis would be an understatement. The game completely switches between being a puzzle game, to being a platforming game, to being a stealth game, to being a collectathon, to being a point-and-click adventure. Traverser never truly picks a genre, and this causes you to question what game you were expecting it to be in the first place. If you try to play the collectathon portion of the game, you'll quickly run into the painful checkpoint system. All checkpoints are directly tied to the narrative, and not to the secret collecting at all. If you go out searching for these hidden collectibles and die, all collectibles that you've picked up since the last checkpoint are removed from your journal, and you'll have to get them again. There are two things to collect in the world of Traverser: secret notes written by the townsfolk, and trace bots who fly around with audio recordings stored on them. These are designed to give the world a hint of depth. The biggest problem here is these elements feel completely wasted. There's a very small number of secrets in the game that are actually worth getting. The rest all feel like you're reading your spam email folder.
Can't believe corsets are coming back into fashion. Well, ladies, I guess we just have to learn how to stop breathing altogether.
In addition, if you miss any collectibles from an area before moving on to the next area, you've missed them for the entire game. This is true despite your constant backtracking around some areas, and there is a lot of backtracking. I would say the strongest point of Traverser is its puzzle platforming sections. The Gravity Glove does a great job of being a manageable tool to move things around and solve puzzles. The downside is, with a few rare exceptions, most of the puzzles are really not that interesting or hard to figure out. Much of the time, it's simply a question of arranging boxes in such a way that you can jump up to a high point. Every now and then, you'll be faced with stealth portions of the game. These sections aren't all that hard though, as even if you get spotted, the guards aren't smart enough to catch you most of the time. If you jump up to a high point where they can't reach you, all they do is run around you and potentially shoot you with their stun guns, which do nothing whatsoever but slow you down. The only way that they can capture you is if they catch up to you and grab you, making the stealth portion of the game a joke unless the camera screws you over. Traverser to me is a game that seems like it had a lot of great ideas, but they were all rushed out the door very quickly. It's worth checking out if only for its beautiful art style and dystopian world, so long as you can overlook its poor AI, lackluster plot, and its exploration, which can drag on. If you're a fan of dystopian worlds and unique settings, then for $15 this game is worth checking out, otherwise I'd wait for a sale. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please consider subscribing to my channel and liking this video. Don't forget to show it to your friends. My name is Highsight, and I'll see you next time.
There it is. Behold Raven Corporation's brand new top-of-the-line cloaking device, the Barrel.